Hi everyone, so today we are going to talk about the things that influence us that might make exercise more or less challenging. And I promise you that once you understand the things that are influencing you, you're gonna be able to change them or change your circumstances. And that's gonna make it a lot easier for you to follow through on your good intentions to exercise. So let's dive into it. I am Justin Kampf. I have a PhD in exercise and health sciences, and I specialize in helping people get started and stay consistent with exercise. So let's start out with the things that influence you. And maybe what we'll do is we'll cover some of the little subcategories. So there's gonna be umbrella categories and there's gonna be subcategories of things that influence you within those categories. So let's start out with what's called different levels of influence, okay? Now, what I'm going to talk about today is just 3 levels of influence, although there are more, I'll briefly touch on them. So what we can think about is you are a person who lives in a social and physical environment, okay? So what does that mean? The things that influence us are the things going on within us. There are things that are going on which is called our social norms, so that's our social circles. And then there's our physical environment and how that influences our exercise decisions. Now there's other things that influence us. So, geographic location is something that we can't necessarily change. You might be more or less active depending on where you live. You can also think about public policy as being something that can influence your level of physical activity. I'm not gonna have you lobby the government to put more parks in your neighborhood. That's gonna be way too difficult. I wanna focus on the things that we can control, or at least identify the barriers so we can plan to work around it. So let's use the things that are going on within us, our social network, and then what's called our built environment. We'll understand how these things influence us and then how we can change them. So a big challenge with exercise is acting on your good intention. So you intend to do it, but how do we translate that over to behavior? Let's start out with the things that are going on within us, okay? And a big category of that is gonna be motivation, okay? And so even within that motivation category, there's different categories here. How confident are we in our abilities to actually do the task? That's such a big one that I think that's worth covering. We don't tend to do things unless we're confident that we can do it. Now, there are things that you can do to increase your confidence in your ability to do a task, okay? And the biggest one is called mastery experience, okay? That just means doing the behavior, okay? We tend to get more confident in the things that we're doing. So that's one, mastery experience. I'll come back to that in a second. The other one's called vicarious experience. Are the people around us successful at change efforts? That can increase our confidence that we can do it. And then also there's like verbal persuasion, for example. So maybe that someone that you trust encourages you and says, hey, you can do this, you're capable of doing it. I think the mastery experience is probably the biggest one. But the way to actually do that, if the task feels insurmountable, so if somebody said, hey, Justin, you have to go out and run a half marathon, I'd be like, well, I'm not really confident I can do that right now. Okay, so let's make the task a little bit easier. So this is called graded tasks, okay? If you're trying to do something, what you could do is say, hey, maybe I'm a 1 out of 10 in confidence that I could go do a half marathon. Okay, so that must mean that I'm probably maybe a higher number that I can do a 5K or something like that. Well, what about going out and walking for a mile? Well, maybe I'm a 10 out of 10 for that. Okay, so pick something that you feel confident that you can do. This is called self-efficacy. So we want to make sure we pick the things that we're confident that we can do. Otherwise, that can sap our motivation. So self-efficacy is a very important thing that's going on within us. Another one, which has different categories too, is called attitude. Okay, and there's different things that are related to attitude, okay? And so attitude might be what's called affective attitude. How do we actually perceive that doing exercise will feel? Unpleasant, boring? Is it fun? Is it enjoyable? Things like that. Then you have what's called, we could just say instrumental attitudes. Do I believe that this is going to be good for me? Do I believe that this is going to help me? Yes, no, so to whatever extent. And then you also have implicit attitudes, which I think is really probably one of the most interesting ones. So implicit attitudes are things that are not necessarily within our conscious awareness. I have people that have said the act of doing exercise makes me feel guilty because I feel like I should be doing other things. So that's an implicit attitude that might be working against you. So we have self-advocacy and we have attitude. Attitude is a little bit harder to change, particularly your affective attitude and then your implicit attitude. I think probably a lot of people have positive instrumental attitudes towards exercise. A lot of people know it's good for you, you know it's gonna be good for your health. But you know, what we have to do is we have to find something that's affectively pleasant. So maybe that's, you know, walking in the woods, maybe that's better for you than going to the gym. So you need to try different experiences and see what works out well for you. With the implicit attitude, that's something that we might need to uncover. You need to think about it. So I've spoken to people that they had to have this aha moment, that they have this unconscious connection between exercise and the actual feeling that they're feeling. Maybe that's guilt, stress, things like that. The other one is knowledge, and I did do a video on this, so all the things that you actually need to know if, you know, a strength training plan is good enough, but that can be a real limiting factor. Again, these are all things that are going on within us. Do we know everything that we need to know to get started to exercise? So there's a lot of information out there. Go ahead, take a look at my channel with some of the information that I've posted out there already too. It can be complicated, but I try to boil it down, keep it as simple as possible. So that's knowledge. Honestly, the best thing that anyone can do is just get out, get started. Maybe that means going out for an intentional walk. Maybe that means following some of our strength training videos. There's a lot of different options out there. If you have questions, please go ahead, drop them into the comment section. I'd be happy to field those. So knowledge, that's also really important. And then another thing, again, things that are going on within us, self-regulation strategies. Do we have the knowledge of how to use those self-regulation strategies? I've talked about this in other videos too, but are we actively planning? Are we paying attention to our behavior? Are we making plans for if barriers come up? Those are all things that are really important. All things that are related to your motivation to actually do the behavior. So those are just a few things that are going on within you. Again, to put that in a nice bundle, plan when you're gonna do it, plan something that you feel confident that you can do, even if it's a small step. Try to find something that's affectively pleasant, okay? That's gonna be a big deal. And make sure that you have the requisite knowledge to actually get started. Don't let lack of intense knowledge hold you back from getting started. Again, that might just be, hey, I'm gonna go out for a walk. I'm gonna follow some of the strength training videos that I have that's available to you. So let's move on to the next type of influence, your social network, so your social influence. Now there's two different types of social influence that you wanna be aware of, okay? One is called the descriptive norm. And a descriptive norm is just, what are the people around me doing? There's no judgment on it, there's no value on it. Are the people around me exercising? Are they not exercising? What is normal, okay? Because what's normal is going to influence you. The other one is called, there's subjective norm or injunctive norm. Regardless of the term, what this means is that the approval or disapproval of you engaging in exercise based on people that are close to you. Are they encouraging, or do they give you a hard time? There's different ways that I've seen people give other people hard times for exercise too. That might look like snide, innocuous comments like, oh, you're going to the gym again. That might look, so maybe that's not something that's necessarily mean or not meant to be mean, but then other times some people can be downright mean. My piece of advice for that, if you are dealing with negative norms, there's a reason for that. So when you start to make a change, that highlights other people's not changing, if that makes sense. If I was physically inactive and I didn't believe that I could be active, and then my significant other started engaging in more physical activity, was doing it consistently, and I didn't feel like I could make that change myself, the discrepancy between where I am and where I feel like I should be widens. And that can either cause action or I can devalue the behavior. And that might mean like, oh, like I'm making these comments. Again, it's not about you, it's always about the other person. So hopefully you do have a strong social network. Maybe that means someone to go out and go for a walk with. Maybe that means someone to go to the gym with, but also that might mean putting yourself in a new social network, okay? That might mean that you are starting to meet people that are more aligned with the changes that you want to make. So that's our social environment. Again, what's normal and what's the value that other people put on that. Then what we have is the built environment, okay? And that's just the physical environment that you live in. How close is the gym to you? Is it near? Is it far? Do you have a walkable path? So for example, I live in Boston. It's often not too challenging for me to get, something like 10,000 steps because everywhere that I end up going, I'm walking to get there. And I have Scout, who is sitting down right by my feet right now. So actually that's social support. So it's not that challenging for me versus my parents. They live in the suburbs. They have to be more intentional to get their steps in. I live in a building that has a gym right in there. So again, it's not too much of a stretch for me to go down there and do that. It's gonna be more challenging if somebody has to, drive 20-ish minutes. So with this, there's things that you can change in your immediate physical environment. That might mean getting equipment at home, even if it's like some hand weights, maybe changing things up. So, if you live in Florida in July, it's probably not that pleasant to go outside for a walk, very much like how it's not pleasant in Boston to go outside for a walk in January. So you might have to plan around things like the weather and stuff like that. So it's important, I think, to think about what is actually influencing your behavior in the physical environment. What's making it easier? What's making it harder? How can I work around some of those things, or how can I troubleshoot those things to make it a little bit more easy to act on my good intentions? Now, this is a quick overview of the things that are influencing us. Again, it's the things that are going on within you, your social networks, and then your physical environment. There's going to be some more things, but I think that those are the big rocks that are important to cover. Please do go ahead and reach out in the comments, or just reach out in general if you have any questions, or if there are any other exercise topics that you'd like me to cover.